I hadn't seen people wearing Bears jerseys out and about, out in the wild, since like mid-November. And here I see 4 people, just sort of milling around town wearing their vintage Bears jersey. People are fired up, and I think for good reason. Fields to me was my number 2 quarterback overall behind Trevor Lawrence. And I just feel like, even though there were some, alarming games, Northwestern comes to mind, certainly Indiana game. Yep. Even I thought Alabama and Michigan State games had some moments where you said, this isn't ideal, but, other than speeding up his timing and processing a tick, and other than sort of preventing those moments where he tries to play hero ball and tries to do a little bit too much, that was like the Indiana game especially, he's got a strong arm. It's the same mechanics every time along, you see him throw, very consistent mechanics. You can tell he's been well coached. He's taken to the coaching. He's improved leaps and bounds as a passer since when he was at Georgia. And oh, by the way, he's got that athletic ability and a really tough kid. I mean, there weren't too many big questions. Obviously, the epilepsy thing came up. Mm-hmm. Talked to some people who said our team doctor signed off on it. It's not an issue that anyone's really worried about. I don't think the Bears are. And I think he's got the mental capacity to handle a complex NFL playbook. So there's a lot to like. Is he going to be the savior? Who knows? But this sure feels a lot different. I don't know about you, but I mean, a lot different than draft night 2017. What a difference.
Oh, it's sad in a way that it feels like this, because for such a historic franchise, you would think we would have other days that it felt so good, and we really haven't. And that's sad to say. Let me ask you this: you mentioned that he needs to speed it up a little bit. How easy is that for a quarterback coming from college to start to learn those traits and know how to start speeding up his delivery?
Yeah, it's a tough ask because everything else is going faster around you, right? I mean, the speed of the NFL defensive backs, certainly their knowledge is going to be a lot greater. They're going to do more complex things. So it's, this is something where I think he has enough arm strength where you can kind of get away with it most of the time, and he did in college. But there was times where you just sort of felt like if he could have anticipated or, just sped up his process a little bit more, as long as they're not retooling his passing mechanics and trying to, mess with his delivery and all that, I think he can do it. Some of it's going to be familiarity and just repetition and things like that. So, but it's a great question. I mean, there are NFL people out there who think that it's more of a mental aspect than a physical aspect. And some are leery whether a quarterback can actually improve on those things other than maybe marginally. So, we don't know the answer, but those are some thoughts I have on it.
Now, listen, the second round pick, Tevin Jenkins, now we know for sure. It seems like he's going to be a left tackle.
Yeah.
How did you have him graded out? Did you have him graded out as a right tackle? And do you think he could be a left tackle? And how quickly do you think he can assimilate to that side of the ball? I mean, that side of the line.
Yeah, no, I mean, he played there, I think, at least one game every single season, or at least the last couple of years where, if they had to move someone over, they moved him to the left tackle spot, put him back at right naturally. So he's played there. He's taken reps. I'd have to go look at exactly how many it is. But, there were certainly times last year or even 2 seasons ago where you saw the left tackle tape. Some offenses are going to be more geared towards protecting the front side and some of that stuff, the footwork, it's going to be a little backward and, but for him, having done it recently, I'm not too worried about it as long as they don't leave him out on an island. And I'll be curious to see where, Larry Borom ends up too. But he's such a fun player to watch. There was an issue early in his career about his assertiveness. Like he would, they felt like he kind of held back a little bit, and Mike Gundy challenged him. I mean, he went up to him in the weight room and said, there's one guy in this room worth $40 million, and it's you. And you want to reach that level, you got to be a grinder. You got to make sure this is your full-time commitment. And it seemed to light a fire on him. I thought he looked great last year. He's a pile driver in the run game. He's got that kind of nasty John Tate sort of element to him or whatever. Yeah. But I think he was a top 20 prospect for me. I didn't realize the hip injury was as big a concern with some other teams, which may have knocked him out of that first round.
Eric, if somebody tells me that I can get $40 million, it better light a fire under my butt. All right, to say the least.
You got problems, right? Yeah. Like $40 million?
Maybe, Look,
we got issues if that doesn't change it, right?
You mentioned Larry Borom. What's the realistic chance that he can be a starting right tackle in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, another guy who played multiple positions at Mizzou. I mean, he was a left tackle, a right tackle, a guard. I mean, he moved around. Whereas basically, from what I understand, they were trying to pick their best five. Who's our best five blockers, and let's figure out where they fit best. And he was, essentially the most flexible, or one of the more flexible of the Tigers linemen. So, that's kind of a nice little benefit. And he's a big kid who, his workout numbers may not pop off the page, but for that size, I felt like they were pretty darn strong. So it just sort of felt like I was talking to somebody who was on the Mizzou staff previously with him and saw him as he came in and said, it just sort of felt like he made a big jump at some point, like that he really kind of turned the corner a little bit and became this NFL prospect. So, is it a little bit of a stretch to say, okay, he can be your day one right tackle? Yeah, I would say, but we've seen crazier things. We've seen, I'm trying to think, there was a Michael Onwenu last year in New England. I mean, his tape at Michigan was good. I wouldn't say it was mind-blowing, but he was one of the best rookie offensive linemen last year in all of football. He was a 6th-round pick. So it can happen. And it'll be fascinating to see if he gets that opportunity.
What grade will you give Pace for just the tackles?
Yeah, good question. If we take Fields out of the equation, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they moved up for Jenkins, right? Had to give up a little capital. Did. Okay. Yes, and then, obviously there were other positions you could have said, okay, a corner, an edge, somebody else, but I had no problem with it because it felt like they needed multiple guys, and maybe there are more pure tackles out there than Larry Borom, but those two picks alone, I would say like a B+ or something, or a B. Yeah, I mean, I think pretty strong. The Fields pick made their grade for me. I mean, I hate to, come on, let's be honest here. But I like the two follow-up choices, and I like Dazz, Newsome, and a couple other choices too.
Talk to me about Dazz Newsome. What can the Bears expect? Will he just be a special team guy, or is this a guy that maybe can supplant Anthony Miller if he's still on the team in the slot?
Yeah, I mean, right. He's probably a slot. He's not a super big frame guy. He's about 5'10"-ish, 190. Yeah. So he sort of has a little bit of a thicker, lower build, though. I mean, his weight surprised me a little. I thought he was maybe closer to 5'11", 200 or something like that. But you mentioned the punt returning ability. He's got some game breaking ability, but he caught almost 200 passes in college too, and was pretty darn productive. He was the leading receiver, I think, 2 years ago, and then second to De'Ami Brown last year. So, I would probably say that he's tough enough to handle the slot, quick enough. The one issue with him that kind of hurt his stock was the change of direction stuff. Like his pro day, I want to say his 3-cone drill was abysmal. And I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was, normally you like those slot guys to be under 7 seconds, and he was 7.3 or something like that. So that was a little alarming for that position. But yeah, I would say even though he's, a little bit of an undisciplined player at times, he's got some upside to him.
And Khalil Herbert, they took 217, the running back out of Virginia Tech. Can we expect for him to actually get on the field, or is this again somebody that can just be a kickoff guy for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, he really opened my eyes last year. Kansas transfer who came in and looked like the kind of guy that should have never been allowed to walk out of any building. I mean, he was pretty incredible, and here's somebody who averaged 8 yards a carry, has pretty good short, stout build, I would say. And, the receiving ability worries me a little bit. He wasn't asked to do it very much at either school, Virginia Tech or Kansas. So, is he a capable pass catcher? I don't know. That makes me wonder whether he can replace or, give them insurance for Tariq Cohen with his injury. So I don't know the answer to that. I think he's maybe more of a backup to David Montgomery, like as a first and second down guy, and you give him a couple touches here. But you're right. I mean, maybe the return ability gives him an opportunity. So, I mean, he's had some injuries, but boy, last season really did change the narrative completely for him. So it was a fun story. I mean, he really worked well behind Darisaw on a good offensive line, and felt like it was 6-7 yards before a defender got his hand on him. Yeah, it was crazy.
I like hearing that. That's what I want to hear. That's definitely what I want to hear.
I'm just buttering you up, man. This is what I do. So